Welcome back, everyone. I'm Linda Neuhauser. I'm a professor at the School of Public Health at the University of California, Berkeley, and I'm delighted to be here, delighted to meet so many of you so far. Looking forward to meeting the rest of you during the time of the conference. And I'm delighted to introduce the panel on education for research, integration, and implementation. So we have a terrific panel from around the world today. I'd first like to introduce our moderator, Allison Ritter. Dr. Ritter is, she does drug policy modeling at the National Drug and Alcohol Research Center at the University of New South Wales. And she will be taking questions from our online audiences. So if you are online, if you have an educational model to share, we'd like to hear about it. I want to welcome all of our audiences online at the co-conferences and everybody here in Canberra. So a recurring theme that we've been hearing over the last couple of days is that if we want applied integrative research to have a big impact, we're going to have to pay a lot more attention to training the people who are going to do it. And that's the focus of our panel today. And we're lucky to have a panel that's worldwide. And each of our 7 panelists will give a very brief 8-minute introduction to an intriguing education or training model that they've been using. We're going to start first with the panelists in Canberra, then we're going to move to Germany, the Netherlands, and finally to Uruguay. And I have to say, and I hate to say, it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Uruguay, and I think we should all give a great big hand. And we hope all of our colleagues in Uruguay are having a great big café espresso muy fuerte right now. Okay. Yes. Okay. So we can start off with the first model. Daniel, if you can bring up those slides. I'm going to start off the conversation here by describing our Berkeley model of educating public health doctoral students in research, integration, and implementation. And let me just get the clicker here. Is there a little slide? Ah, here we are. Thank you. Great. So, all of us know, we've been discussing this for the last couple of days, that the traditional way of educating students at the university in disciplines is just not effective at training students to integrate knowledge across disciplines or to apply it across sectors. And this is something that we have experienced at Berkeley, had big problems with this. In fact, a very common complaint that we get, for example, from the directors of health departments that hire our doctoral graduates is this. They say, well, these people are excellent at doing research, but they don't have the skills and they don't have the inclination to go into the field and do the critical work of understanding and addressing really complicated health problems. And these are the kinds of people we need. So after hearing these complaints for quite a while and also looking at the literature, learning about interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research and integration, I2S models and so forth, in the year 2000, we decided to transform our Doctor of Public Health program from a series of individual disciplinary programs and turn it into one big program that would cover all the disciplines. And I'm not only talking about the disciplines in public health, which are many, but I'm talking about all the disciplines in the university. So that could include engineering, policy, architecture, music, anything that might relate to understanding or addressing a health problem. So in the new program, the students are focused on solving real-world problems rather than just testing theories, as in some of the other doctoral programs that we have at Berkeley. The students are also trained to engage with many different stakeholders from government, communities, and also the private sector. The program has a charter, and in that charter, it says that the program is explicitly transdisciplinary, and by this I mean that the students are trained to develop new theories, methods, programs, and applications. It is also explicitly translational, and so the students are trained to engage with many different kinds of end users, politicians, researchers, and practitioners. And it's heavily focused on participatory methods. So that is something that's been a core approach there to get students engaged. Now, how does the program work? Well, first of all, it's very selective. To be admitted to the program, a student has to have already a master's degree and significant disciplinary competence in one or more disciplines. They have to have at least 2 years of professional experience and demonstrated leadership capacities. So each year we select an incoming cohort of students who have diverse personal backgrounds and diverse disciplinary backgrounds. So what we're doing is starting out already with an integrated team. Once they're in the program, then the students are trained on transdisciplinary and implementation, theory, methods, quantitative and qualitative, all kinds of methods, including brand new methods, and implementation skills. They also receive a lot of training in communication areas, so training about doing negotiation, conflict resolution, teamwork, media, television and radio, and also writing for diverse audiences. Students tend to spend about 3 to 4 years in the program, and from the very beginning, they're engaged in real-world programs, real-world research in communities or other places around the world, doing that either individually or as teams. Sometimes they take on joint projects, and you can see here in this slide an example of one of those joint projects in which the government of Mexico asked a group of our students with diverse disciplinary backgrounds to come and help them set up a new policy for HIV/AIDS. And so we have many examples of these successful programs that students have done together as a team. So what happens to these students when they leave? Well, about half of them go into academic programs or research institutes, and the other half take a variety of senior leadership jobs. So those could be in consulting or global health or working in local health departments or other kinds of jobs. Many of the students pick hybrid type jobs, so they're doing a mix of research, practice, and policy, and that's one of the great benefits of this program. So here are some of our students, and this is what it's like when you're there. When I walk into a room, they're happy, engaged, creative people, and it's just absolutely wonderful. I just wanted to give you a feel for this. I wanted to mention a complementary program that we're doing at Berkeley. So I am the principal investigator of the Health Research for Action program, and this program has been going on for 20 years actually, and what we've done is to create kind of a lab for doing I2S type work. So we have a mix of researchers, practitioners, and policy people and communication experts in one center. And many of the students come in there to work with us on real-world projects around the world. And it is just a terrific experience. Some of those students then, after they graduate, they stay with us. So they get to have the training, they get to work on actual projects with us, actual I2S type projects. So it's really terrific. Reflecting on this program over the past 13 years, at the beginning we had a lot of challenges. Some of those challenges were that the disciplinary faculty were really slow to understand the value of a program that was covering so many disciplines and had both basic and applied research. They didn't think it could be done in any depth. Also, we had trouble funding the program because the traditional disciplinary pots of money were not really available to these students. And it was hard at first to link these students to other schools on the campuses and other programs. But then a very interesting thing happened. A few years into the program, the faculty began to realize just how terrific these students are. And so they began to snap them up to become their teaching assistants. And then they found out that they were also terrific at doing both basic and applied research, and they began to preferentially pick the Doctor of Public Health students over the students in their disciplinary areas. So now we have a whole group of disciplinary faculty who are our champions, and they love to teach in the program. They fight over all the students when the incoming ones are coming, show up at the school. So it's been just a terrific turnaround there. And I think it's, we've had so many successes. I have to say that these students, we have about 100% employment rate. There's great demand for these students because of their broad and deep skills in working in just about any situation to understand or to address a program. So this has been our experience, and I will look forward to hearing some of your experiences too when we have time for questions. So I'd like to turn now to our next speaker. Thank you all. I'd like to introduce Marcel Bursztyn. And Marcel is a professor at the University of Brasilia in Brazil, and he is with the Center for Sustainable Development. So he has interests in many areas, regional and sustainable development, also environmental policy, interdisciplinarity, of course, perceptions of climate change, and ethical issues in research. And I have really been impressed in the short time I've known you, Marcel, with your vast experience in education, and also with your penchant for bringing up provocative challenges to I2S. And I just have the hunch that you probably throw out a challenge or two when we hear you now. So I welcome you, Marcel.
Thank you, Linda, for this kind words of presentation. It's quite a responsibility for me to make my presentation after all these things you have said about me. So I'm just looking into an instrument of torture I have in face of, just in front of me, which is counting down. It's already 7:30 minutes. So I'll try to stick to what I've been what I've prepared to present to you, and I have to admit I've been changing this speech in the last few hours many times, and I even tried to rehearse to see whether I can fit in 8 minutes, and I never succeeded. So I start with a consideration about the evolution of university as an institution along the 20th century, which has evolved and has a very large expansion in terms of disciplinarities or disciplines, and this expansion has followed into two directions. The first direction is by fragmentation. I mean by that some disciplines have just split, such as, for instance, the natural sciences splitting into geology and biology. The second movement, also very important, was by aggregation. That means joining one or more fields that already existed in other disciplines into a new discipline. For instance, bio plus physics, biophysics. The institutional framework of the university, its identity, mechanisms of management and corporate culture have evolved according to these two movements. Not only evolved, but also been consolidated. Against this trend, but in accordance with the real world, as some of the complex challenges we are facing nowadays cannot be put in the slot of a single discipline, a growing movement is now perceivable, not now, it's been perceivable for at least a few decades, and this movement I call integration. Do not it's not the same as the aggregation I've just mentioned. Integration has the characteristics of being a kind of plastic way of promoting ad hoc cooperation among disciplines. This is just the introduction, and I've already spent 3 minutes. As mentioned yesterday in this conference, this is not a new trend, as there are experiences for the last at least 4 or 5 decades, very important experience in institutionalizing interdisciplinarity in the university. For instance, the MIT has an urban planning program for the last 55 years. The matter is that this program, as far as I understand, slowly became a kind of discipline in itself. So, what's new today is the fact that interdisciplinary programs are no longer exceptions. They are coming with a very high speed everywhere in different domains, and in not being, apart from not being exceptions, they tend not to become they tend not to be seduced to become a kind of interdisciplinary discipline. This is new. Because disciplines, even those coming from an interdisciplinary origin, they tend to become framed by very specific and strict rules. In the case of the new movements towards interdisciplinarity, they are no longer just communities organized in itself, but rather open communities. People can enter and leave the moment they want according to their interests, and their interests can vary along the time. So we better talk not about disciplinary community, but rather about epistemic communities. As time is a short resource in our panel, I'll just report the experience very briefly and without falling into the temptation of describing some idiosyncrasies of the program I belong to, which is the Center for Sustainable Development in Brazil, and which has been created in 1996. We have graduated by now over 400 masters and 200 PhDs under the umbrella of sustainable development. Students and faculty come from a very wide range of undergraduate backgrounds. Research activities involve a large number of networks involving not only international partners, but also interinstitutional relations and interdisciplinarity, of course. And we deal with a very wide range of complex subjects, going from environmental governance to climatic change. I guess by presenting a case stressing its successes and also mistakes or challenges, I can bring the discussion to the following point. How to create and legitimize a place for gathering people who are dispersed in various departments and institutions outside the university so that we can deal with complex subjects. This is the challenge we had since the beginning. I don't have much time. I'll just mention a few aspects in terms of successes. 17 years after the epical period in which a small group just decided to open this academic interdisciplinary unit, not attached to any departmental structure of our university, it seems we have finally been assimilated. I put assimilated under quotation marks, although not necessarily very much understood. From an improvised and volunteered group of idealists, each one belonging to a department and therefore having to work twice more than the rest of the people because we were not discharged of the duties we had in the original department. We are proud of having our own faculty. Our classification, Brazil has a very strict system for classifying and evaluating graduate programs. Our classification is rather good. Our alumni, and this is very important, they are doing pretty well in the labor market, especially in research activities, governmental agencies, and universities. As challenges, there is still a stigma among our colleagues in the university, our colleagues from the departments, disciplinary departments, linking interdisciplinarity or identifying interdisciplinarity as a kind of shallowness or shallow science. Quotation marks, not so peer evaluation frequently misunderstands that we are not bad social science or bad biologists. We can be bad, but we are not bad this or bad that. We are just interdisciplinary, and we have to be measured and analyzed and considered as so. We have to be alert to avoid attracting candidates, both students and faculty, that seek interdisciplinarity, and I think this is a very important issue. Some of them seek interdisciplinarity, not because they have this vocation or interest, but just because they have no interest, or because their lack of competence, they are rejected in their origins. They are somehow eccentric and have no academic focus. In some cases, even they try to join interdisciplinarity for leisure. So my time is off. If I can read just 5 lines. An important lesson came to our experience. When we try to produce masters and PhDs disconnected to their original background, they became their outcomes, their dissertation and thesis, were vague and really shallow. But when we turned into the strategy of keeping the original background as a kind of anchor or ground, and then adding interdisciplinary elements, the outcomes became much better. So the conclusion is that there is no such a person interdisciplinary. This interdisciplinarity is the process. People are just what we are. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marcel. And now I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Cha-Am Pachanee, who is with the International Health Policy Program in the Ministry of Health in Thailand. And Dr. Pachanee has many challenges that she deals with. She deals with complicated issues such as looking at the impact of international trade on health services, health resources in Thailand, health policy, environmental health. And I've been very impressed with the way that she's taken an I2S training program at the ANU right here, and she has adapted this for Thailand. So we'll get to hear about that now. Cha Em.
Good afternoon, everyone. You are probably familiar with my Thai accent by now. We have been listening to a lot of difficult stuff during the last 2 days, so what I'm going to share with you will be very, very simple. I see myself as a newcomer for this arena, and I see myself as a result of the I2S capacity building that Gabriel Bammer has been working on. And I am one of those people who are in the learning process for the moment. And what I'm doing now is working on bridging the research evidence into policy and implementation, like what John Young presented yesterday, how my research can contribute to best policy, particularly in Thailand. I am a researcher and my office is a research office. We produce a lot of evidence, but how we can maximize, make a maximum use of that information or findings that we got into a real implementation is what we are doing. It is quite challenging. Last year, Gabriel invited me to attend the course on bridging research to policy at the ANU. And during that 6 weeks training, I learned a lot in terms of policy process and also how to link between research evidence and policy. So when I went back home, I reported what I have learned to my supervisors. And my supervisors felt that the information was very useful, so we should transfer what I have learned to other people in Thailand. Even though there are a lot of similar workshops running in Thailand at the moment, but the one particularly for our office and our partner office are not that, it was very rare. So we had several internal consultations among ourselves and with other partner office to come up with the best solution. And we came up with an idea that because we are a research office and our partner are research offices, so we have a lot of evidence. How could we use that evidence to influence policy? So we came up with the idea of organizing a week-long training workshop on preparing a good policy brief. This is the pictures from the training last year. Even though it was like 6 heavy weeks, but everyone was happy at the end. Oh, okay. Thank you. The first training was planned for early March this year, the 4th to the 8th of March in city outside Bangkok. And the course was 1 week long, and it was for 15 participants. When we made an announcement, we got about 80. We got 78 applications, but only the first top 15 were selected. Certainly, we developed the criteria for participants because those participants had to be the one who really work on proposing our policy recommendation to policymakers. They have to be the one who generate the evidence themselves. So we set up the clear criteria, and participants are not only from Ministry of Public Health, but also from the non-health background. Some of them were from the university, some of them were from the National Science and Technology Organization. And myself, as well as the senior people from university and from my ministry, we developed a tailored program, like how to fit what I learned into 1 week. So the first workshop the program include like the policy process, just to give them an understanding of what policy process are, how important the evidence-informed policies is. We also teach them the presentation skill, which is very important. If you have only 60 seconds or 1 minute with policymaker, how could you introduce him or influence him or her within 60 seconds? How to use very simple language, because policymakers or politicians are not clever than us. Writing policy brief is also the main focus. And besides that, we thought the experience from policymakers would be very useful. So we invite three very senior policymakers to give a panel talk to share their experience and also to tell us what information they want, what kind of information and presentation that they would like to hear from us. So, and also what kind of recommendation that politicians or policymakers need, because as a researcher, maybe we are very familiar with kind of writing executive summary, but it is totally different from what policymakers could understand. And for the second workshop, it was in July this year, just recently. We changed this a bit. Instead of announcing for application, we invited our network partners to nominate suitable candidates to participate in the workshop. It works in a different way because the way that, like, if they applied by themselves, the level of interest is much more than being nominated by the organization to attend. So if you want to organize this kind of workshop, it's better to let them apply for that. And we changed from policymakers to give us their experience. We invited senior policy entrepreneurs who have worked with a lot of people who have generated evidence, and also they work with policy makers. So we learned how those policy entrepreneurs influence policy makers. And each day, everyone has to do their practical work. So half a day for each day was allocated for practical work and group discussion. So there are a few key success factors for the two workshops. The first one is collaboration between organizations and experts, particularly those senior people, my supervisors. And my supervisor also, he kind of networkers himself, so he could initiate collaboration from many organizations and other experts to help in preparing for the workshop. And also the interest and willingness of participants is very important. Gabrielle was at the first workshop and she could see how active those participants are. And information, direct experience from policymakers and entrepreneurs are very important, so that those who propose policy recommendations know what they should propose. And lesson learned from that is that the position or responsibility of participants are very important. If they know the whole context of the issue that they are working on, then they know what to propose. If they know the policy process, they know what to propose. And we also provide a case example of the real policy brief and ask them as a policymakers, the policy brief that they see, what they think, if they like or didn't like anything in particular, so that they know how they should do their own policy brief. And other relevant skill that we teach them, like a presentation skill, how to use simple language that everyone understands. And the last, the last point I would like to make is about our future plan. After the training, we create kind of informal network among the participant and facilitator, so that participants, if they have any questions or draft policy paper that would like to ask for recommendation, then we do the recommendation among our group. And we hope that we would be able to mobilize more funding for the future training. Thank you.
Thank you, Chaim. Isn't it amazing what you can get out of 1 week workshop? I mean, this is, yay, ANU, Gabrielle. Love it. Okay, now we are moving to Germany. And I have the pleasure of introducing Professor Daniel Lang, who is at Leuphana University. He's actually the Dean of the Faculty of Sustainability. And his research areas include transdisciplinary and transformative research, also sustainability science, and systemic assessment of human environment systems. And I think you will find his global classroom as intriguing and as amazing as I have, especially in light of the talk we heard this morning that in which we learned that working across geographical spaces can really improve the success of our programs. So I want to invite Daniel to begin. Thank you.
Good morning, Canberra. I have 8 minutes, and it's hard to convey all the things I could tell you about I2S ideas in teaching at Leuphana. But I try to focus on the undergraduate level, and I will end with this. If you now wait the entire time for this global classroom experience, there will be the last slide about the global classroom. But the thing I want to tell you is how Leuphana tried to implement I2S ideas throughout its teaching programs on the undergraduate level. It's also on the graduate level, but I think today I want to focus on the undergraduate level. First of all, why is it important from our perspective to train our students in I2 or to convey to them I2S competencies? If you see here on the first slide, Leuphana underwent a rather traumatic reorientation process over the last 6 to 7 years, and this entire process was guided by 3 principles. It's A, that Leuphana wants to be a humanistic university, B, that Leuphana aims at being a sustainable university, and last, that it is an action-oriented university. And if you take these guiding principles for granted, then you need to put curricula into context, and you need to kind of go beyond pure disciplines. And I want to present you 3 elements of the curriculum of Leuphana on the undergraduate level, how we try to realize this idea of going beyond disciplines. Next. The next slide. Good. This is the basic structure of our bachelor's program. You see here we have a Leuphana semester, and I think this is the first specialty. The Leuphana semester is a semester that is done by all students together. That means the students do not start with their major, but they start together studying cross-disciplinary skills. I wouldn't say that this is, and this can't be an interdisciplinary study because they are not trained in a discipline yet, but it's really to depart from I2S and not to put somewhere implementation and integration at the end of the studies and let them learn how this might work. Next slide. Next. This is the structure of the. If you can go back one. No, I can tell you about the Leuphana semester. Here you see it. The basic idea of the Leuphana semester is that all students start with an opening week. That means they work together on a project and learn together how to tackle this project. And then you have they have different courses. It starts with responsibility. Here they do research-based projects together in sustainability or related to sustainability. Then they have a methods module where they learn about cross-disciplinary methods. That means they have stats there, etc., etc., etc. Then we have an element that's called boundaries, because from our perspective, if you want to integrate, it's also important to learn, well, how different are the different disciplines. That means here they learn basic principles of their major to put them into relation to this cross-disciplinary skills. And finally, they have a history module where they are trained in basic research skills like doing a review, how do I cite, etc., etc., etc. And this all ends in the so-called conference week, where they present the first results of the responsibility module. And as I said, this is 1,600 freshmen studying together, no matter whether they will major later in sustainability science or whether they will major in economics. Next slide. And then you see here another element is it's kind of the major. And in the major, as I said, they study either sustainability science, or they go to economics, or they go to educational science, cultural studies. But also in these different majors, we have deliberately implemented elements where they work together and kind of deal with real-world problems. Next slide. Here you see the curriculum of the major environmental sciences, and I can't go through all the elements, but one key element in this entire major is that we have a transdisciplinary project at the end of the studies. That means they are first in the third semester. We provide them with inter and transdisciplinary foundations. It's kind of a methods course. And then in this transdisciplinary project, which lasts over 2 semesters, they work together on a real-world problem. For instance, the students currently work on how can we regionally, or how can we close regional resource loops. And they work together with different companies, etc., to really elaborate on ideas how these real-world problems can be tackled. Next slide. The last element I want to show you, and here we come to this global classroom, is the comprehensive studies. In the comprehensive studies, again, all students from the different majors come together and learn or work on cross-disciplinary issues. It isn't necessarily that these are always transdisciplinary projects. It's also, for instance, again, methods courses that are cross-disciplinary. It's also several philosophical courses where the different majors come together and elaborate on certain projects. And one speciality we are currently experimenting is the global classroom. Next slide. And in this global classroom, this is a joint project funded by the Stiftung Mercator, the Foundation Mercator. And here we have a collaborative project with Arizona State University. And in this collaborative project, the entire comprehensive studies, which is about 1/6 of the entire bachelor of the students, students from different disciplines do a research-based program right from their first semester. That means they work 1.5 years on a certain topic. This year, or in this cohort, it's sustainable cities. And it's not only that they work cross-disciplinary at Leuphana, but it's really we work together with the colleagues and with the students at Arizona State University. It's organized in a way that in the beginning they use video devices, as we do it at the moment. in a week, I will travel together with my students to Arizona State, and at Arizona State we will then develop joint projects. The students from Arizona State and the Leuphana students will develop their joint projects where Leuphana students and ASU students will work together. Then we come back, they work on the projects, and finally the ASU students will come to Leuphana and present together with their Leuphana colleagues the results of the projects in May next year. There is much to be said about the difficulties we have in there, starting from technical difficulties, cross-cultural difficulties in communication, etc., etc. But for me, the major experience in this global classroom, and I want to end with that, is that it's possible and that it's fascinating. And as far as I have learned now, we're working on it 1 year, is that both the students but also the teachers learn quite a lot in this cross-cultural setting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Daniel. That's quite an accomplishment. And now I have the pleasure of introducing someone else who's also in Germany, and that's John van Breda. And he is the project manager of the Transdisciplinary Sustainability Analysis, Modeling, and Assessment Hub, or SAMA Hub, at Stellenbosch University in South Africa. And this effort is conceptualizing and implementing the first transdisciplinary doctoral program in sustainability studies in South Africa. And I was really affected by John's argument that transdisciplinary approaches are really important in post-apartheid South Africa. John, welcome.
Thank you very much, Linda and Canberra. And yes, it's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to Leuphana University for hosting me here the last week and today as well. Next slide, please. Next slide. The first slide I have, no, the previous one, please. Previous slide. Can you just go to the previous slide, please? Yeah, thank you. In this slide, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, just to say to you that our history of having established this transdisciplinary doctoral program in sustainability has had quite a bit of a history. We started as far back as 2005 to discuss it, and we've had quite a few highlights in our journey to actually establish this particular doctoral program. I've highlighted and hyperlinked quite a lot of these references to these steps, this path that we have walked the last couple of years. And please, if you're interested, just go to the hyperlinks afterwards and find out a bit more for yourselves about the program. Next slide, please. I would rather like to, in the next couple of minutes left, share with you some of the challenges that we are facing in South Africa. The biggest challenge that we're facing in the post-apartheid South Africa is that we're sitting with a real complex problem. We do not know how to transition from the current state to a more just or a sustainable future state because of this increasing poverty problem and the widening gap between the rich and the poor that we are experiencing 20 years into the so-called new democracy that we have in South Africa. This complex problem is really forcing us to fundamentally rethink some of the key transdisciplinary concepts and principles, such as doing science with society, mutual learning, and knowledge co-production, integration, and innovation that have come out of the developed world. Click, please. The reasons for this is not only because these concepts, these transdisciplinary concepts have been developed in a completely different social and contextual conditions, under different contextual conditions, but also because of a dominant theory of social change that has been handed down to us from our past, where the suggestion is that people that are trapped in poverty can only get out of this situation that they're in by taking the state head on with violent community protest, which has become known in our society as toy-toying. Next one, please. Unfortunately, this violent community protest action that has become the modus operandi for social change in South Africa has been met with even tougher reaction from the state side. And I'm referring specifically here to the tragic events of Marikana last year. Maybe you have already seen that on your television screens as just an example of the way in which the state, the government, has actually reacted in a much tougher than expected manner to these community protests. The point that I'm trying to make about this situation is that this vicious cycle of violence and counter-violence is prohibiting any new theoretical and practical solutions from emerging out of our situation in terms of how to overcome poverty. And this is specifically noticed that there's been no creative solutions that have come forward out of the government's breaking new ground human settlements policy over the last couple of years. Next slide, please. Next slide. It is then against this background that our challenge is the question of how to co-produce integrated socio-technical innovations, which not only addresses the technical aspects of the needs of the poor, but does so in a way that potentially has the potential of developing new ways of understanding social change in our society. In other words, how do we link and integrate our theoretical and practical knowledges in a way that not only addresses the poor's immediate basic needs for housing, electricity, water, sanitation and waste management, but doing so in a way in collaborative and participatory ways that will empower the poor to negotiate their way out of poverty with the state, rather than reverting back to the tried and tested and failed methods of violent protest. This process of social change and innovation of how to do exactly this is currently underway as our team, our transdisciplinary team of supervisors, educators, researchers, students and community co-researchers involved in the Nkanini case study that we have launched are busy learning very fast how to design and develop technically challenging and detailed solutions that are at the same time empowering the beneficiaries of these solutions. Starting with the improved redesign of informal shack dwellings that have become known as the iShack, we are learning that it is indeed possible to bring various academic disciplines such as engineering, architecture, ecological design, economics, finance, sociology and anthropology, and link these with a practical knowledge of living together and through other people. In our context, this is known as Ubuntu, to come up with niche innovations that increasingly are beginning to attract the serious attention of policymakers at all levels of government. Next slide, please. And evidence of what I've just said now, that we might be on the right track with this particular doctoral research that we're busy with, is that in June this year, the Stellenbosch municipality has agreed to include the allocated free basic electricity subsidies to homes not connected to the national grid in their indigenous policy, a first for a South African municipality to have done this. If this goes through and be adopted by other municipalities in South Africa, it will be really groundbreaking stuff that have come out of the work that we're busy doing. Then also very significantly, on the 31st of July this year, a national parliament portfolio committee visited the iShack project in Nkanini, and they have spoken directly to the people that are involved, also to our co-researchers involved in this particular project, and they were tremendously impressed by what they have seen. Because as, next little slide please. Because in the words of the chairman of this National Portfolio Committee, he was most impressed when one of the participants said to him that we are showing the people in town and pointing to the direction of Stellenbosch that we can build our own suburb rather than going out there and toying and demanding that the government should come and do this work for us. So what you see in this last slide is actually the coming together already of a number of concrete things that are coming out of our transdisciplinary research. It is a new research center that has been established in this particular informal settlement. You see there Mr. Yondela, one of the co-researchers that have been trained by our researchers to work together with him, and a visit by a National Parliament Portfolio Committee listening carefully to the changes, to the socio-technical changes that are beginning to emerge out of this research project. And I think I will just stop there, and thank you very much for the time that I've had to share this experience with you.
Thank you so much, John, for putting that lens of social justice done in a practical way before us. And now we are going to move to the Netherlands, to The Hague. And I wanted to mention that Professor Tu Besselink will unfortunately not be able to join us today, but I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Gideon Shimshon, who is the director of the Center for Innovation at The Hague. He is an expert in gaming and simulation, and he's passionate about developing new tools and methods to understand and solve tough problems of governance. So welcome, Gideon.
And listen to the wonderful speakers we had. And I want to start by explaining a little bit where we are. First of all, this is a faculty from Leiden University, which is based in The Hague, which is a different city. In a sense, we are a spin-off faculty where transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary studies have been placed far away from the traditional university context. And that's one of the things that an early speaker referred to as something that is quite a tense balancing act that you have to do when you're trying to deal with these topics of integrating and implementing research and science. This faculty is focused essentially on governance, sustainability, security, peace, and justice, which fits into the city's profile. And what we do basically here is have a number of centers that work very closely with the field, both with students and people from government, people from companies, to see if we can create new types of research partnerships. I myself am responsible for the Center for Innovation, which gives a different perspective on this topic where it comes to what social science in the future could look like. And some earlier speakers alluded to this, and this actually confirms some of our beliefs, so thank you for that, that the mix and the integration of the more technological aspects of science into the social science can provide new avenues to understand our research better, but also tackle global challenges, which our previous speaker has very vividly reminded us are crucial things to tackle in the future. So let me go to the past a little bit, because just to give you a bit of context, I hope this slide works.
No, you have to say this.
Next. Yeah. Oh, there you go. I hope you can all see this. Because we're talking about transdisciplinary education in this panel and how that works. So I found a picture from 1900 where you see what the classroom vision would be in 2000. So this is a person painting a picture in 1900 on how the classroom would look like in 2000. And what you see is a bunch of books being put in a machine, and the knowledge being thrown through wires into the heads of the students. In one aspect, it was an early vision on e-learning, but also a couple of points were missed, namely the social aspect of learning and the relationship with society, which I think has become more and more important as time progressed. But in a sense, we're in a similar situation now, and our task, as we boldly like to take it, is to look again 100 years in the future and probably get it completely wrong, but at least we tried to figure out how we can implement a vision like this. Next slide, please. Or do I press? So I'll give you briefly 2 examples of projects that we have started that are changing the way we think about education and research in the context of a university. First of all, about a year and a half ago now, we partnered with Stanford spin-off Coursera to develop MOOCs, massive open online courses. We thought it would be a good idea to provide education to everyone that would like to have it and provide our best professors to the world and see what happens. So essentially people that are not registered at the University of Leiden from all over the world, and here you see 2 graphs for the 2 courses that we're currently running, can access our learning and follow a full curriculum or full course, including end tests and a certificate from the university at no cost at all. The first course, Introduction on European Law, had around 42,000 participants, 2,500 of which actually received a certificate from the University of Leiden. And the second course, which will start in 2 weeks' time, is currently running at 22,000 participants. And this changes the way we're looking at education. I mean, we are currently thinking of how we can actually push the boundaries of this mechanism and see, on the one hand, how this applies in our classrooms. Can we use this? Can we actually get the best courses from other universities? We're currently experimenting with using a full online course in our classroom instead of a book. How does that work with students? And we also have researchers doing research into what we're doing. So on many different levels, we're trying to figure out what this means. But the core aspect of this is learning by doing. And I think that's a critical aspect, that you kind of have to take the plunge and see where it takes you. I'm trying to figure out how the slides work. Next slide, please. Oh. So why we do this? Very simply, learning by doing, and we want to learn about learning, and especially experiment with the campus, not campus relationship. Just to give you an example, in the course on terrorism, we actually design it in such a way that we can do research together with the participants from all over the world. And this gives an N that is very significant for research that hasn't been able to be done before. You used to take years to get a survey representative from all over the world, and now we have 20,000 people from most countries in the world that we can ask to participate in the science, and also ask to give input into the science. And that whole dynamic is very interesting, and we're very excited actually to figure out what this could mean. So I think with my time in hand, I'll just give you one other example. Next slide, please. Of a project that we did that is a bit of a smaller scale, but nonetheless gives you the idea and the flavor of what we're trying to do here. Here you see some pictures of social scientists building 3D printers. So we had a summer school where we got history students, we got political science students, humanities students, to build a 3D printer, a technical exercise. And the point was not to understand only the technology, but by building it and working with the technology to try and answer some of the societal questions and the impact questions that are related to this. So what does it mean for supply chains? What does it mean for laws? What does it mean for the governance structures and IP, for example, when or if we have 3D printers in everyone's cabinet? And we really see a transformation the moment you have students interact with the actual physical environment in such a way. And that is very exciting. And a second thing that happened during this course is that we launched something called the 3D hubs, which basically means that here in The Hague we have 26 owners of 3D printers now that you can go to. You can send your design and you can decide on a price and you can pick up your print on the bicycle. So it's immediately put into action and into context the things that were talked about. And we couldn't imagine that this would happen when we thought, okay, 3D printing, that's something we need to work on. But it happened, and then you have to kind of go with it and see where it takes you. And just on a quick note, next slide, please. I would like to leave you with 3 questions that we're struggling with, and I hope we can get that debate going. Next slide, please. Last slide.
There's some delay.
Okay.
The question is, I'll mention the question, there are 3. So how can we scale and mainstream this? We're doing this with the MOOCs, but with a 3D printing course, how do you get teachers and educators throughout the universities to embrace this and experiment with this? At the same time, how can we assure broad approach and depth at the same time? Because that's always a thing that we hear from the other faculties, that this is an impossibility, in a sense. And in general, what does this mean for the research communities? So I would like to leave it at that, essentially with an open question, and that's why we basically exist. So let's take it from here. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Gideon. You're really taking us into a transformative new world of e-learning and e-action using I2S. So now we are going to go to, last but not least, Uruguay, where people have been staying up late, and we really appreciate that. I have the distinct honor of introducing Professor Bianca of Vienni, and to show that we are truly an interdisciplinary group here, Bianca is an archaeologist. So we have our first archaeologist, and she is an assistant professor at the Academic Department of Espacio Interdisciplinario, which is just what it means, interdisciplinary space, at the University of the Republic of Uruguay. And she also heads the educational laboratory program in archaeology. So she has many interests that span the dynamics of interdisciplinary work, scientific democratization, communications in collaborative cross-disciplinary research. And I've been very impressed looking at Bianca's work with how she links together disciplines as diverse as art and biology and architecture. So I'm looking forward, Bianca, to hearing about this amazing program you have in Uruguay. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Linda. I would like to thank as well the invitation, and thank you very much, Gabrielle, for letting us participate in this conference. As Linda told you, we are here in Espacio Interdisciplinario. At my back, some of my colleagues who are waiting for, for my presentation. So, as the title of the presentation says, I'm going to talk about education and interdisciplinarity, and I would like to develop some of the categories we worked on: groups, practices, and dynamics. I have to say that, as you can see in the first slide, we are a group of people who are working in an academic department, So this is one of the research lines we developed since 2009. To begin with, next slide, please. There you can see some of the interdisciplinary groups our university has. We put just the amount to give you an idea of what we are talking about. Sorry, that's not the correct slide. I mean the previous one, please. Thank you. So as I told you, this is just a brief overview of the kind of interdisciplinary groups we have at our university. We have thematic networks, interdisciplinary centers, interdisciplinary nodes. So for this brief presentation, I chose 3 examples, and I'm going to explain one by one why I chose them, because I think they give a very good example of what kind of inter and transdisciplinary links are being developed in these programs, these educational programs. So next slide, please. The first example I would like to show you is the Master in Integrated Management of Seashores in the Southern Cone of America. As you can see, I put links, so maybe afterwards, if you would like to deepen in some of the characteristics of these programs, you can do it. There you can see that this program works among different faculties. These faculties are trying to put together what the main question we're trying to answer right now, that is, what is integrated management of seashores? So for them, for this group, it is a process. And that's why I chose this example, because they try to develop this process implying interdisciplinarity, participation in the way it was told before in the other presentations, interinstitutionality, based of course on the concept of integrated management. The interesting thing about this program is that they develop and implement programs for the protection and sustainable development of coastal resources by integrating different levels of government, different disciplines, academic and scientific communities, but also integrating policymakers. They try to make that these policymakers participate in the program by bringing real social complex problems, wicked problems, as it was told yesterday in the conference. So, next slide, please. The next example I chose is the degree in human biology. Human biology works with 4 faculties. So I asked myself, why human biology? Why I thought this was a good example to share with you today. Because they try to train professionals capable in the field of human biology, of course, but considering human being in his psychosocial, biological dimension. So their starting point is a complex study option. They try to do this through 3 cognitive areas: basic technology, health, and social artistic. In this case, we are talking about a bachelor degree. So this interdisciplinary group works with 19, 20 years old students who are almost entering university, and they have to build their own curricula, of course, with the professor's help. But this is done in a very horizontal way, because the program tries to make that the student takes courses in different faculties. I have to say that our university hasn't got a campus, so this implies that students have to move from one place to the other, from the different faculties, and from different parts of the city. So this is also interesting, because it constitutes a reference for students, as it promotes interdisciplinarity without privileging only one discipline or one particular area. It also tries to develop a new identity for students And from this degree, they try to build various social engagement projects or teaching or other new research lines. So, this next slide. Last but not least, I'm presenting the art and programming workshop. In this case, we are talking about a workshop which is open to almost all disciplines at university. And this is pretty interesting because it tries to explore the relationship between art and computing. Programming language is the excuse, so it seeks to generate a platform for interdisciplinary work using this language. In the exploration of this language, or using programming language or technology language, the different disciplines are just used as a starting point. I mean, for example, if I'm part of that workshop and I'm an archaeologist, the only thing I have is my archaeological knowledge. But as they work in groups, and again, they are very worried about the process and not only the product of the workshop, they want both students and teachers to bring their own intellectual baggage and then be immersed in this technological world. Why I say this technological world? Because they use the computer as an excuse. I mean, when you participate in this workshop, what you do is to try to put together all these different knowledges and try to create something new. So, next slide, please. How can we put together, or how University of the Republic puts together all these different experiences and the others I showed you in the first slide? There you have some pictures of what we do here at Espacio Interdisciplinario. As Linda says, it's just that, interdisciplinary space where different inter- and transdisciplinary groups are gathered. We do not like ourselves to be mentioned as a faculty, but as a place which promotes interdisciplinary interactions or transdisciplinary encounters, something more or less of what Marcel presented as a challenge for his university. Here we are trying to do something like that. So as I said, Espacio Interdisciplinario has the main aim of promoting interdisciplinarity through different programs. Some of what I have shown you are being gathered here. And we also develop different activities which tries to reflect on what inter- and transdisciplinarity is, and tries to work through different kinds of not only interactions but ways of performing these programs and research lines. So thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward for questions.
Thank you very much, Bianca. It sounds like this would be wonderful to go to your espacio. So maybe someday some of us will be able to go there. So this brings us to the end of our panel presentations. And I wanted to thank all of our panelists for an amazing journey of different models, in university models, cross-university models, open source, global, free learning and action models, in ministry models, and so forth. So for a variety of purposes, whether it's social justice or advancing particular health outcomes, we are seeing some very important initial successes here using these I2S approaches. So I would like to open up the discussion first to our online communities, just to remind people that there's a little bit of a time lag between the conversations that we will have around the world. I would also like to invite people, we have a little bit of time for discussion, if you have a model of education or training that you like to share with us, this is a great time to do it. So, Allison.
Thanks very much, Linda. I have to say that we haven't had any postings through the webcast cloud. So our participants in other countries, you can use the webcast cloud to post questions or comments. We have had a Twitter post from my good self asking myself a question on Twitter, which has prompted some twittering about my question, which was to do with the training for inter or transdisciplinarity when students don't already have a discipline. Is this possible or not?
Are the speakers on the microphones here? Yeah. Can everyone hear that around the world, the question? Is that something that people can hear in the other locations?
Yes.
Okay. Daniel, would you like to respond to that question?
Yes.
Yes.
I think this is it's a relevant question, and we have always discussions about that. First, I think, and I try to make this explicit. In the first semester, and this is also hard for our colleagues, we don't talk about inter and transdisciplinarity. That means we don't say we have inter and transdisciplinary courses there because, as you said, the students don't have a discipline yet. Therefore, how can they work inter and transdisciplinarily? Though we are convinced that there are cross-disciplinary skills and competencies that you need if you want then later in your career work inter and transdisciplinarily. And this is I'm really convinced in that if you don't start right from the beginning in training the students in these capacities, it's so much harder for them to work inter and transdisciplinary if they start after their major and if they are socialized in the disciplines. And therefore the basic idea is to depart with this cross-disciplinary competencies, then going deep into the different disciplines and afterwards opening it up again and do inter and transdisciplinary work. But as I said, I wouldn't say that you can train right in the first semester without having a discipline and really do interdisciplinary work.
And do we have other comments about for this question? Marcel.
Yes, what we do in my center, actually we have masters and PhD students. The fact is that these students, they come from very different backgrounds. So, and some of them join us for the master's degree, and some others just join us for the PhD. So we have to have a kind of initial courses for leveling some views. So we insist very much with those coming from the natural sciences that they have to understand and how things are seen and conceived in the humanities and social sciences, and what are around those people coming from the social science. We try to introduce them to the fundamentals of ecology and natural sciences. This is a kind of, but we don't do that in separate. They are all together. But the integration, in my view, the most important space for the integration is the research. So we try very much to make our students join research groups. Although, and that's something we learned as well, it's not fair just to try to frame them and sometimes even preventing them to develop a very interesting and innovative activity and research. So we usually try to invite those students to join the research groups, but they are free to develop their own studies.
Thank Thank you, Marcel. And I think that Gideon, did you have a comment? To all the people who are at other locations, please raise your hand so we can see here if you'd like to comment.
I didn't have a direct comment, but I agree with previous speakers. This integration of research and education, I think, is critical. And how we structure that also across the disciplines is very, very tough. I mean, that's what we're finding. Not from the student side. The students really appreciate it, like it, would like to get involved, but often from the faculty perspective, this takes away the depth that they expect from their students. So there's always these discussions, and we're still figuring out how that works. So any ideas are welcome.
Thank you. And we have a question or comment from Canberra.
Hi, my name's Catherine Gordon. I'm a student here at the Australian National University, an undergraduate. In terms of a model, I'm part of a student group that's called the XSA, which stands for the Cross-Disciplinary Students Academy. We've actually developed a student group that exists external to the institution in the sense of creating a space for discussion between students and promoting a cross-disciplinary understanding and interest. One of the questions that I'm sort of interested in is the idea of a need for a physical space that we can occupy for cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary discussion, and this need for, it's not just a mental or sort of online space, it's this need for physical, and how that's being sort of approached and has been taken up by perhaps students internationally as well.
So this makes me think that, Bianca, your espacio interdisciplinario, you have physical spaces where students can meet and faculty. Is that what you're finding?
Yes. First of all, I think that the critical aspect here is political intention. I mean, our university had a political interest to build this place. So that's the first thing, of course, that we need not to be, or to try to be institutionalized. On the other hand, it is very important to have a physical place to gather. I mean, this is one of the most important aspects for interdisciplinary groups. I mean, it's like a silly thing, but if you have a physical space where you can gather, you can build an identity there, that is a great facilitator, of course. And last but not least, of course, the effort the group does, that is very important, because sometimes these initiatives are very difficult to cope with time, effort, and the synergies that are needed to develop the group's aims.
Thank you. And we have comment from Gerald Midgley, or... Okay, Gerald?
I wanted to, Gerald Midgley from the University of Hull in the UK. I wanted to directly address Alison's question about whether transdisciplinarity assumes grounding in a prior discipline. It would appear that it should, because the word disciplinary is in transdisciplinary, so it's easy to jump to that conclusion. But I want to look at it a slightly different way. I did my PhD in a systems science department, which was outside the faculty structure. There were lots of people in that department who did undergraduate degrees in systems science, and they did integrative, using integrative methodologies, integrative theory. They had lots of different lessons from people doing international relations and geography and all sorts of things, and it was a systematic process of integration and projects across all that. So there are graduates out of that who've got degrees and PhDs in that area. Now, that's possible to do that because there's a systems research community, and the term research community is absolutely critical to this, because you could actually say, well, what is systems science in relation to this research community? You can build a body of knowledge about it. It was meaningful to do that. Now, if that means it's created a new discipline, there's a slight irony there. Maybe that's the case, but this goes to the heart of Gabriel's question as well about whether I2S needs to become a discipline. So I think you can have transdisciplinary education without a discipline in the traditional sense, but whether it ends up mimicking a discipline, it doesn't matter as long as it really is open and engaging in the way that people have been talking about.
Thank you, Gerald. Do we have another comment from here? Because we have 2 online comments. Eric, did we have?
There's a fresh question.
Okay.
Nothing on this subject.
A fresh question, and then. Okay. Why don't we go to you, Daniel, and then we'll go to the 2 online questions. I mean, Gideon, sorry.
Gideon.
Go for it, Gideon.
I would like to come back to the question about the physical space. I think that's a critical aspect for a number of reasons. One of which has to do with the fact that we're becoming more online. I mean, this session in itself there is a new need for smaller spaces, intimate spaces where people can meet and talk. So when people are talking about the end of the university, I think that's a wrong approach. But we do have to think differently about the way we structure universities from a physical perspective. For instance, we built something called a living lab, where it looks very nice because you also want to have people from outside of the university to come in and feel pleasant. And I think people in the room here feel that. At least I hope to hear that afterwards. But at the same time, also, not just classroom, but also project rooms. We are currently thinking of what we need pop-up project rooms for people to spend a year, 3 months working together, and that is not something that is in the DNA of the way we approach buildings. So one of our new projects is, with the new building that we're planning here in The Hague, is to really facilitate and experiment with this. And our lesson learned is to really use agile methods to do that. So you have to really look iteratively at the way you want to structure your space to enable the learning research process and collaboration process together with the people you're working with. I think that's a really big challenge for universities, planning and building budgets for the coming years.
We'll take Bianca's question if it relates to the issue of space. Otherwise, we'll take the 2 online. Bianca, is this a response to Gideon? Okay, so Bianca, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you. It was just a comment on the previous question and Gideon's comment. In our case, physical space is critical because, as I said during my presentation, we do not have a campus. So we have different faculties all gathered through the city, through Montevideo. So this space, what it's trying to do is not to institutionalize interdisciplinarity or create a new discipline. What we're trying to do is to promote a space where different groups can gather because of this geographical problem we had, and on the other hand, to try to contribute to those interactions and encounters to happen. So I didn't have enough time in my presentation to make this comment, but Espacio Interdisciplinario is not thought as a place where only one definition of inter, trans, multi, cross-disciplinarity is taking place, but it's trying to do the opposite. It's trying to put together all these different perspectives and try to see how we can contribute to moving on, as Gideon said, in an iterative process. Thank you.
Thank you. So we go now to our online comments. Alison?
We actually have 3 questions, so you may want to write these down if you wish to comment on them. The first is from Jan Boll, the University of Idaho. She's asking, is the job market ready to receive these new interdisciplinary graduates? And it's a he from the University of Idaho. That's the first question, is the job market ready? The second question comes from Uli Vilsmeier at Lufana, and this is a question for Bianca in Uruguay. Bianca, you said we need to create a new identity for students. The question is this identity that gets created related to their content topic or to their type of method? The Lufana experience is that there's a real challenge with professional identity and in-betweenness. The third question comes from the Netherlands, and apologies for my pronunciation, Sjoerd Louvaz, who asks, how can we better bridge the language barriers for interdisciplinarity? Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Alison. I'll make a comment here about the job market. I'll reiterate our finding at our Doctor of Public Health program that we have 100% employment rate in excellent jobs, often hybrid jobs, from those students who graduate. And we all know that in the discipline area of the universities now, it is getting increasingly difficult to find university jobs, but our students are proving all the naysayers wrong in the early years of developing this program. Now, that's public health, so I think we can also look at other areas here too, and Marcel has a comment.
Thank you for this question about the job market. This is quite a complex question. I had the hypothesis that our alumni were in full employment, and everything seemed that they really were in full employment. Then we made a poll, and we asked our alumni whether they were employed, and the result was that they are occupied mostly, but not necessarily employed. I mean, most of our students are working in public institutions dealing with public policy, our former students, public policy, or in university or in research centers. But a great deal of them prefer not to be employed formally and just to be free as freelancers and consultants, and to be here and there doing different kinds of jobs. So it's a kind of non-expected result. The rate of employment of our alumni is shorter than it was before, but they are better off. They are doing what they want. And I would say that if they are not employed, they are really very much occupied and, as far as I know, happy.
Do we have other comments about employment? Gerald.
Yeah, Gerald Midgley, University of Hull. This is a really interesting one, because if you go to employers and ask employers what they want, you get consistently the same answers. They don't give you a list of skills, as in, I want the student to have studied X and Y and Z. They generally ask that they want to critical thinkers who can problem solve and who can work collaboratively and work independently, and all these kinds of things. They're traits. And these are the traits that this kind of education can develop in people. So I would say that as long as the student is able in their CV in their interview to relate that education to those skills that employers are wanting, they should be eminently employable. There are obviously some professions, like if you're a lawyer, you've got to have a law degree. If you're a doctor, you need to have a medical degree, and that's going to be different. But in terms of general employment, I would have thought they should be eminently employable.
Thank you, Gerald. And Daniel has a comment.
Well, my comment goes in the same direction. We also have sometimes the problem here that we should describe concrete job profiles for our students in sustainability science. And we kind of say, well, how can we do that? Because we're talking about great transformations, societal transformations. We kind of think that the world won't look the same in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. That means we try to say that we convey competencies to our students that help them to fill the job profiles of the future, and not kind of define or try to define the current job profile that's strictly and say, well, this exactly fits into X, Y, Z, but really more providing the students with competencies where they kind of can survive in this world of the future, and then also where they can fill the jobs of the future.
Thank you. We have another comment here in Canberra, and I see that Gideon has a comment, and I think we'll make that the last comments on this question, then move to the question for Bianca. Eric, did we have a comment here?
Question from up here.
Oh, if this is a new question, we'll save that until we finish the online question. So don't forget your question. Bianca, I'm going to read back the question, and Allison, you can correct me, but I think it was, you said that we need to create a new identity for students. Is this related to content or method?
Okay, I appreciate the question, and I will try to answer it in this way. In the two first examples I presented, the master and the undergraduate degree, I think that they try to create a new identity through two processes that imply on one hand, a professional identity, because they try to develop different group activities and different skills, and that later on they're going to be part of that professional identity that these students are going to develop in different areas. And on the other hand, as I said, they are also developing an identity in the method. They are trying to gather, for example, the concept of sustainable management or human biology, because students are immersed in different real or almost complex situation and complex problems. This has to do also with the second question about the job market. In the master degree, as I said, they try to integrate policymakers or authorities or different stakeholders in the program. I mean, they're almost also students or try to participate very actively of the program in a way to try to cope with these problems that they are having in real life or in different ministries or government offices. So I would say that to answer the question, I would say that to create a new identity is to try to work in these two processes, one the methodological part and the other one try to go with a professional identity they're going to develop later on in their professional lives.
Thank you, Bianca. Alison, could we go to that third question? Could you read that?
The third question was asking about how we can better bridge language barriers. And while people are thinking if they want to comment on other questions, there's a question about using distance learning better. There's also a question about how you select the right students, because it seems that the selecting the right students is critical. That comes from the Netherlands.
Okay, so how can we better bridge language? We have a number of people here at Canberra who are experts at language issues and dialogue, and I assume that we're talking about language in terms of terminology and not necessarily cultural languages. Would anyone like to comment on that? We've had a few presentations about this. Okay, we have a comment here in Canberra from Christian Paul.
Thank you very much. Christian Paul from Switzerland. So I'm not sure whether you like the answer, but I think the point is that communication and language will become very, very slow, because you can basically use no terminology that is used in your scientific or non-scientific community. Basically meaning that if I talk about transdisciplinarity, I cannot say transdisciplinarity. I have to say, well, if you do research by bringing together different disciplines and including such and such stakeholders, so I have to explain kind of every terminology that I use, and which is the way what I think this is how you can deal with the language problem, to make all the underlying assumptions in like every 10th word that you use, to make those explicit.
Thank you. You can't avoid it. Marcel has a comment too.
I'd like to make a comment on that. Language is the first step to build interdisciplinarity. If we want to join people coming from different trainings and obviously who learn to speak different academic languages, the first step is to make them understand each other. What's not easy, because the disciplines they build, by definition, they build their own language not to be understood by the others. So we have to deconstruct this commonplace in mostly in all disciplines, so that people they can understand and talk to each other. So what we do in the beginning in our training is try to put in the same classroom people, the students coming from different trainings, and say, well, now we have to understand each other. And we find out, discovering that some of the, for instance, concepts that we use in one discipline is used in a rather different way in another discipline. For instance, the term development. Development can be used in whatever sense you want. But on the other hand, there are some concepts which were born in one specific discipline that are very much useful for other disciplines. I mentioned resilience. Resilience is imported from the biology or ecology, and it's very much useful for the daily life of someone dealing with interdisciplinarity. So I would say it's very important that to be interdisciplinary or to work in interdisciplinary teams, it's important to be disciplinary polyglots.
Thank you, Marcel. I think we'll take the next online question, and then we have one from Canberra. And do you have one too, Gabrielle? Did you want to comment on the language issue? Okay, something new. Okay, so why don't we start with the question about how can we use distance learning better I might address this to you, Gideon, since you've been out there doing it, and as well as some of you, the others of you. Daniel, you too.
Thank you very much. I think first of all, distant learning better starts with good didactics and putting the learning in the center of what you're trying to do. Technology is not an answer, it's a tool, and it's kind of a thing that everybody says, but it's very hard to put into practice. And we find that the moment you work with educators that understand this concept and you facilitate them in the way they want to teach, and you ask the right questions, you can really improve the way you're using distant learning. The amount of tools and methods that are out there right now are immense, and the only thing we do is pick and choose. Like you don't have to build stuff yourself for distance learning. There's so much things that you can do in even your classroom to get students engaged with what is happening in your institutions or outside. Just a very quick example. There is a course to build your own computer. You can just give students the assignment and facilitate them in doing that. They can just get some parts and they will build a computer based on the online material that is available there. And there is a story about a professor in South Africa, I think, that wanted to make students understand how robots work, and she just gave them the assignment: go online, build a robot, and show it to me. And that is one way to use distant learning in a very practical sense. And first of all, students liked the assignment much better because they had ownership over the process. So this idea of dialogue in an online community is also something that we need to work on. Just to give you some trends that I see happening, I think this mix of what is happening in virtual classrooms and the MOOCs will integrate in the coming years. And that the flip the classroom concept, or a mix of online and offline intimate classroom settings, will become more and more important. The question is whether students will do this in the university or at the local Starbucks. That's one of the things that we are already seeing. Some of our students prefer to go to cafes.
Thank you, Gideon.
Meetups.
We have.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
My apologies. My apologies.
Did you have more to say, Gideon? Okay, well, I think we will move. We have 3 questions lined up here in Canberra. Then we have Gabrielle. Our time also is getting short, so let's try to move through these questions. First question over here.
Mark Edwards from University of Western Australia. My question is about ethics and the role of ethics and more generally the expression of values in the education of students and in the formation of students with these inter and transdisciplinary skills. So could the panellists just comment on the role of ethics and what experience around ethical commitments they've had with their students?
I can make a very quick comment that in our Doctor of Public Health program, the students are required to take a course in ethics. So that is one of the basic foundational requirements of the program. Maybe others can comment on this. Ethics?
Well, I can say just a word. In my program, we have nothing in ethics. Although in my view we should have. So what I do myself, I teach 1 or 2 classes with just presenting some ethical issues which are very important. Myself, I belong to ethics committee, so I'm very sensitive to this subject.
And I think John van Breda from South Africa made a very important point about this integration and implementation work is a very important tool for social justice. So in that respect, I think that, John, your program is based on a very important ethical foundation, whether you call it ethics or not. You can call it social justice, and there's a lot of overlap there.
Absolutely, Linda. I mean, at the core of, I think, what is driving our students to have becoming involved in the kind of practical research work that I have tried to explain or share with you is an ethical awareness, accepting the consequences of our own actions, not only vis-à-vis the environment, but also the injustices that have occurred in the past. If it wasn't for this deep ethical awareness, I don't think I would have been able to share with you anything here today. So at the core of what is driving, motivating the students definitely is this deep ethical awareness. But also just to say that formally, as part of our master's degree in sustainable development, there's also a course, a module on ethics and leadership, where, more formally and academically, these ethical issues are actually being discussed and, as part of a master's course. So I don't think that it's at all possible to speak about what we've spoken about so far today without ethics. It's absolutely fundamentally important.
Thank you for that comment, John. We have Jageth and Eric. We have another question here in Canberra.
Mike Smithson from the Australian National University. I just want to throw kind of another concern into the mix. Our traditional education conditions us and teaches us a lot about how to describe and give evidence of what we know. It doesn't teach us very much at all about how to carefully describe what we don't know. And so a kind of a challenge I want to throw out to the educators in I2S and other related traditions is how to set about teaching students to be able to carefully describe what they don't know, what are the unknowns. I mean, we all know that, for example, being able to describe a problem or a question, getting a question right is oftentimes more than half the battle towards getting an answer. But we don't actually have, as far as I know, much in the way of systematic educational pedagogical principles for being able to teach people how to do this. And one model that I would offer you is the medical curriculum on ignorance that was founded at the University of Arizona back in the 1980s by a philosopher and a professor of surgery. If you Google that and go online, you'll quickly find out what that program is about. But it's one of the few programs I know that has attempted to actually get professionals who are going into an area that's fraught with uncertainties to be able to actually know about how to understand what their uncertainties are, how to frame questions, and how to describe what it is that they don't know.
So Michael, after your talk today, at least 4 people came up to me and said they had an epiphany from learning about the unknowns. And so I think we'll park this issue as something that we can deal with, if not sometime tomorrow, but after the in the post-conference, as a to-do for our group to find out where these models are and how we could get those out through the I2S website. I'm just proposing that. We have another question, and George, did you have a further comment on this? Or if it's something new, we'll take...
Why don't you take the continuation and come back?
So Eric...
It's actually our last comment from the House.
Okay, excellent. We didn't miss anybody up here, did we?
We're good.
Okay, Gabrielle, you're on.
Thank you. Gabrielle Bammer from the Australian National University. And let me say what a thrill it's been to see you all and also to hear your wonderful presentations. I think we're just about out of time, but I'd actually like to ask a question that involves you all. It seems to me we have 3 survivor programs. So we have John's program and Linda's program and Marcel's program, which have been around for some time. And we have 4 new programs. We have Gideon's and Bianca's and Daniel's and Cha-Aim's, which are new programs. And I'd like to hear what the survivor programs would offer in terms of lessons to the new programs about how to keep going when the going gets tough, because I'm sure you've all been through tough times. And I'd like to hear the new programs ask a question of the old programs of something that they would find useful.
Well, I would keep talking about that the whole night, but I'll try just to mention some tips that are, in my view, are important, some mistakes we have committed and some solution we have found. First of all, it has to be very clear that opening a space for interdisciplinarity within the institutional tissue of a university, it's not an easy task. And it's very important to have in mind that you should not fight against disciplines. I mean, interdisciplinarity is not to be seen as anti-disciplinarity. On the contrary, it's just, as it is in Uruguay, a space for meeting. And there, I would say that it's very important that this space is accessible. That the space has a kind of centrality, has a kind of visibility, so that people coming from other disciplines can be seduced by what you're doing. In saying so, one of the main lessons we learned that the institutional building of our program was based because we have no means in the moment we created this program. Has mainly been based on external collaboration, people coming from other institutions, what is very rich in terms of bringing to the university things that the university sometimes can't see, and also by inviting or bringing people from many departments in a kind of system that we call joint appointment. People who has one leg in one department and the other leg in this interdisciplinary space. It's good in both senses. People coming from the department brings some oxygen, novelties and new ideas from what's going on in there where people are looking with a magnifying lenses into some problems, and are bringing back to these people the result of the discussions that take place in this interdisciplinary space. So joint appointment, in my view, is a key issue that you should have in mind.
And I want to underscore what Marcel just said, because I think all of us are convinced that we have to go in this integration and implementation approach. There is not a choice if we want to do better in this world. Now, how to do that, say in a university setting, is complicated. And we have found the same thing, that people in disciplines are much more readily interested in accepting joint appointments. We have them with city planning, with social work, with business, with policy now, all kinds of joint appointments. That is something the university understands and is willing to increase. And so as we build these interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary programs, which are harder for disciplinary people to understand, we're doing so gradually. The other one piece of advice I would have is be optimistic. Get a core group of like-minded, determined people together to do this. Do not give up. It's going to take a few years for this kind of hard work to be successful. And there's a lot of pushback. But it's the right thing to do. The students, as we've already heard, you know, let's unleash their creativity. They want to go in this direction. We, academics often hold them back. So I think it's very important lessons that we have learned. And Chaim, you are using a different model with the ministry. What have you learned that you'd like to pass on to people who want to try these other workshop training approaches to work with different stakeholders?
From my direct experience, I think the person who is in charge or taking the lead in developing this kind of program must be able to connect with people. That person needs to be charismatic enough so that he or she could convince or influence collaboration from other sectors, other offices, and other experts. That is what we have been through, and it's quite successful. And in terms of survival of the program that Gabriel has asked, we did extensive evaluation of both workshops. We asked if the contents of the workshop were very useful, or if participants want to learn something else, and what they want us to help in the future. So we did that, and we came up with the reports. And our course is informal. It's not. It doesn't belong to any organization, but it belongs to the collaboration between several a number of organizations. So this is quite a big question for us: how to continue that, because those organizations, they are not only within the Ministry of Public Health, but they are independent and they are quite politics. It depends on the interest of the director of the organization as well. Like the organization who is funding the workshop, the director has changed, so we are working hard to try to convince the new director to work with us. And also in terms of financial sustainability in the long run, we have to think about that too.
Thank you, Cha Em. And to wrap up our session, I would like to go to our colleagues first in Germany, then in the Netherlands, and finally in Uruguay, to have your thoughts about the direction of your newer programs and whether you have learned anything from the discussions we've been having here. You have searching questions that you're still trying to figure out. So why don't we go to Daniel and John in Germany?
Thank you, Linda. Yes, I will respond also by responding to the previous question. What is our advice, but it's also advice to ourselves. And the first thing I would like to, again, emphasize and re-emphasize is the importance of the social relevancy that we are busy with. If we say in transdisciplinarity that we are interested in social, societal transformation, this is what we will be characterized by. And our experience is that we are being increasingly taken more and more seriously within the university because of what I believe we are busy with cutting-edge research that is contributing to societal change in our society. That's the first point. The second point is that, of course, doing exactly this social transformation type of research is that we should produce new knowledge, new ways of understanding what it is that we're busy doing when we're doing social transformation research. As I said in my presentation, we are beginning to understand a new theory, a new theoretical understanding of societal change. And the onus is on us to actually publish this and make this presentable in published journals or books to demonstrate that the practical work that we're doing is actually initiating and inspiring new theoretical thinking about society.
Thank you, John and Daniel.
Just briefly, kind of I think I want to make one major point. For us, it's currently at Leuphana. It's less the challenge that we need to convince our board of the leaders of our university that this is relevant, because it's kind of, this is their strategy. For us, it's more important, and therefore I think this conference is so important. It's really to build this community, to make Leuphana not just an experiment, or the things we are doing not just an experiment, but really establishing it in working together and learning from each other. And a nice example for us is this global classroom. I think this is kind of a win-win situation. We have, on the one hand side, we have Arizona State University, which is a well-established university, helped us also to raise the money at a major foundation, because it is kind of, it gives a a really good sense of, well, this is also done as at an established university. On the other hand, we're kind of this innovative, smaller university. And for me, this is really inspiring to have this learning together. And if we really manage to move more into this direction, that we learn from each other, that we consolidate our knowledge, I think this is the thing we can, that would be very helpful for us, and maybe also for the other initiatives around the world.
Thank you, Daniel. Gideon, final thoughts from you.
Very briefly is, first of all, thank you very much. What we have found here today is a set of kindled spirits, I hope, that we, from our end, would really like to share and learn with and collaborate with in the future. Because for me, this opened the eyes for a new community that I hope we can be joining and be part of. And the question that I essentially have for the let's say the gurus and the people who have done this for a longer time is, how can we balance this thing of being, on the one hand, we feel that we are outside of the university, and on the other hand, we desperately need to be part of the university, and how do we deal with that tension? And that's, I think, a daily question that we try and work on. And so working in that tension is interesting, and sharing thoughts and perspectives would be very valuable. So thank you very, very much for all your wonderful comments so far.
Thank you, Gideon. And now, Bianca, you all might as well stay up until the morning, but we really appreciate all of you participating at this unusual hour. So what are your final thoughts for us?
Thank you, Linda. I had two brief comments. One is that what I think these younger programs have learned is the importance of making new links and connections with other inter- and transdisciplinary groups. I think that in the way they are trying to grow and to be more institutionalized, they also try to build different networks with other groups who have similar interests. So that, I think that's an important aspect. And on the other hand, I have to agree with Marcel in the fact that it is important to perform interdisciplinary journeys, as Lyle like to call it. I mean, to go into interdisciplinarity and then to try to go back to your departments and institutes and try to share that experience with other colleagues. I think that's another way of trying to making new try to learn new things about these experiences.
Thank you, Bianca. So I want to thank everyone. First of all, our commentators online. We can't see you, but very good questions. Our co-collaborators in other countries, and all of you here in Canberra for a very rich and provocative discussion. This is just the beginning of many of our journeys. And so I think we'll have a lot to consider tomorrow and afterwards as a whole community. Thank you very much. I want to give thanks to all. Oh, I think the most marvelous of all is our technology people. You're brilliant.